My younger sister fell in love with a mortal scholar. She was willing to give up immortality and leap from the execution terrace just to marry him. I couldn't bear to watch her go astray, so I tricked her into eating forget-worry grass. Love and hate, grudges and past lives, all vanished like smoke. But my sister came to hate me with all her heart. If you hadn't interfered, I would have been Thomas's loving wife for life. The path of immortality and endless years was never what I wanted. The first thing she did, after relying on my pills and the opportunities I gave her to ascend to godhood, was rip out my immortal bones and cast me down into the Nine Netherworlds, never to rise again. In this new life, looking at my sister kneeling on the ground, insisting on jumping from the execution terrace, I no longer tried to stop her. I truly wanted to see whether this time she could really grow old in mutual devotion with her Thomas, just as she wished. Falling forever into the Nine Netherworlds, never seeing the light of day. I was finally about to dissipate from this world. After so many years of imprisonment, I was long since numb. Death might not be such a bad ending. In this half-immortal, half-ghost state, who could still tell that I was once Peony, the flower fairy? Just as my primordial spirit was nearly exhausted and on the verge of dispersing, my sister appeared, newly ascended as the goddess of Lily. I watched her walk slowly toward me, mockery on her face, hatred burning in her eyes. Why? Why did you treat me like this? To this day, I still didn't understand. I had helped her become a goddess. Why had she repaid me by destroying me? Immortals must endure the three deadly calamities of lightning, fire, and wind once every 500 years. Only by surviving them can one live as long as heaven and earth fail, and one's cultivation is utterly destroyed. Lily loved to play and hated to cultivate. I couldn't bear to see her immortal path cut short, so I gave her all the pills I had refined over the years, even all the rare heavenly and earthly treasures I had gained through my own opportunities. And after she gained her divine rank, the very first thing she did was pull out my immortal bones and crush them, inch by inch right in front of me, then cast me into the Nine Netherworlds to torment me day and night. Barely clinging to life under her torture, I forced out one last breath to ask Lily why. To become a god, one must cultivate the path of ruthlessness. You only ever wanted me to become a goddess, so you could climb onto my high branch. How could you possibly understand what love tastes like? If you hadn't sabotaged things, Thomas and I would have been together, flying with wings entwined and sharing one pillow. Why else would I endure 10,000 years of loneliness? Thomas? It took me a while to remember who that was. He was the mortal my sister had fallen for when she secretly snuck down to the mortal world, a poor scholar with nothing but sour words in his belly. For his sake, she'd been willing to throw away thousands of years of cultivation, erase her name from the immortal registry, and leap from the execution terrace. Just to marry him. Even as I was about to disperse, I couldn't help laughing. So this was the reason? How utterly absurd. For a mortal man, she had lain in wait for so many years, just so that on the day of her apotheosis she could cast me into the Nine Netherworlds and torture me without rest. Such love, how bitterly ironic. Today, I'll have you pay with your life for my Thomas. Lily focused her power into a sword, and with a single strike, shattered my primordial spirit completely. The last thing I saw was the hatred burning in her eyes. In an instant, I became streaks of white light and dissolved completely into heaven and earth. Sister, I beg you, please let us be. I truly love Thomas. If I can't have him, what meaning is there in becoming a goddess? The stench of blood faded. The blazing clouds all around made me dizzy. After a moment, I came back to myself and realized I was still in the heavenly realm, not the lightless Nine Netherworlds. My body was being shaken violently, and at last I opened my eyes. Lily's face loomed in front of me. Instinctively, I tried to pull away, but she grabbed me hard. Sister, this is the last time. Please help me one last time. Her expression was agitated, her fingers tightening painfully around my arm. The pain finally cleared my mind. I realized that I had been reborn, returned to the day Lily was about to leap from the execution terrace. When immortals fall in love with mortals, the three realms will not know peace. The heavenly court has long decreed that immortals and mortals are never to fall in love. Those who defy this rule will have their immortal bones removed, their names struck from the immortal registry, and be hurled from the execution terrace, never again allowed to cultivate or become immortal. When I heard that Lily was going to abandon her immortality and become human, I was stunned. In a panic, I rushed over to drag her back. But she refused. With a loud thud, she knelt on the ground, tears falling like strings of pearls, her forehead split open against the stone, her devotion written in blood. Furious, I demanded, "Do you understand what leaping from the execution terrace means? You will never be able to cultivate again. You will never be an immortal again." Lily lifted her head, her face full of resolve. "I know. But I love him. I love him. Sister, you don't understand. Have you ever felt warmth? Have you ever shed tears? Has anyone in this world ever loved you so much they'd gladly die for you? Thomas is willing to do that for me. I never knew what love was until he made the world seem full of color, until he made me feel truly alive. If there is no feeling, no love, I'd rather never be an immortal and instead spend a lifetime at Thomas's side." Back then, watching Lily kneel, my heart ached for her. I thought she was young and ignorant, deceived by a sweet tongue. So I coaxed her into eating forget-worry grass. A mortal's life is short, just the blink of an eye to an immortal. Later, I went down to the mortal world to see that scholar for myself. What I saw shocked me. I simply couldn't imagine that this was the same gentle, refined, brilliant talent my sister had described. I arrived on the day he was marrying a courtesan from a brothel. Amid the clinking of cups and peals of laughter, he drank and said, "That fool claimed she was a fairy. Just happened I wanted to see what a fairy tasted like, and she practically threw herself at me. Now, thanks to the hairpin she left behind, I can turn stone to gold. I've made my fortune. I'm marrying a beauty. That worn-out woman dares call herself a fairy? I'd like to see if she doesn't come looking for me, who else would want her?" His words were followed by a roar of crude laughter. I was livid. First, because the little sister I loved most had been tricked and humiliated. Second, because she had privately left her hairpin to a mortal. That alone could spark disaster. With a spell, I reclaimed the hairpin and hurried straight back to the heavenly realm. I went to Lord of Fate and had every coin that scholar had gained unjustly scattered to the winds, turning him back into the poor scholar he had been. When I saw Lily again, she had already eaten forget-worry grass. I thought she had forgotten everything. I never imagined she was only pretending to have lost her memory. On the surface, she focused on cultivation. In truth, she was nursing hatred. Using my pills, she completed her cultivation, achieved fruition, and became the goddess of Lily. Once she took her divine seat, the first thing she did was rip out my immortal bones, grind them to dust before my eyes, then cast me into the Nine Netherworlds to torment me night and day. At the time, I had been relieved, thinking she had come to her senses and was diligently cultivating. I never guessed she was doing it all so she could destroy me. What happened in that past life completely woke me up. Since you love him so deeply, I must of course let you have your way. I'll wish you and your Thomas a love that lasts for lives upon lives, never parted, a pair of devoted mortal spouses. I wanted to see, with me no longer standing in her way, whether she could really grow old with her Thomas, never parted. Lily clearly hadn't expected me to agree so readily. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. I smiled. "As your elder sister, I can't bear to see you struggle so painfully to become an immortal and then a goddess. Since you wish to fall from immortality, then go." Joy lit Lily's face, but beneath it there was a faint hesitation. How ridiculous. In my last life, I had tried everything to persuade her, and she hated me to the bone. This time, I agreed, and she was the one who hesitated. "But sister, if I give up my immortality, you and I can never meet again." She wasn't afraid of never seeing me. She wanted to have it both ways, remain a goddess and have mortal love. How could the world ever be so kind? Even if we never meet again, what is that compared to your feelings for Thomas? One day in heaven is a year in the mortal world. Every moment you stay here means another year away from your Thomas. What could be more important than being with him? Those were the very words she had once used to block all my reasoning. Back then, when I refused to let her descend to the mortal world and forced her to eat forget-worry grass, I even used the water moon mirror to show her the scene of that man marrying a wife and having children. Far from believing it, she claimed I had fabricated the vision. The feelings between me and Thomas aren't shallow. How could his love for me be slandered by you? You all tell me immortals can't fall in love, that immortals and mortals can't be together. Only he told me that love knows no right or wrong. His hands are warm. Every time he holds my hand, I feel a warmth I've never known. Cultivation is unbearably dull. Only someone as cold and heartless as you could endure 10,000 years of solitude. You're not my sister. Only Thomas truly loves me. Only he can make me feel warm. She spoke as if ready to stand against the whole world for love, but to me, it was absurd. Was mortal love really worth more than a divine seat? If it were, why did so many strive to cultivate and live forever? I shook my head and pushed those thoughts aside. Lily stared fixedly at me, as if I were about to rip out her immortal bones and throw her into love's abyss. She pleaded, "Sister, please let me go. If my immortal bones are removed, I'll have no powers left." You wouldn't bear to see me suffer in the mortal world, would you? Then what do you plan to do? I asked. For an instant, something like hesitation flickered in Lily's eyes, but it vanished at once. Sister, draw out my immortal bones for me. If you help me this once, I can stay with Thomas for life. So long as you don't leave the heavenly realm, even without your immortal bones, it won't affect you much. Even knowing how selfish she was, I was still shocked by her shamelessness. She couldn't bear to give up her powers or her romance. She wanted everything, and she had to drag me into it. Sister, I know you can't bear to see me fall from immortality. Just help me this once. I promise, after I've spent 100 loving years with Thomas, I'll come back. By then, I'll have risen to divine rank, and you can be at ease. With every word, I found it more laughable. She still believed I would help her become a goddess. Everything she said was for herself. After all I'd given her, all she offered in return was, "Don't worry." My patience was wearing thin. I was only wondering why he hadn't appeared yet. Fairy Lily, do you know what you're saying? Right on to you, Judgment Lord arrived. In this life, without my deliberate concealment, I was not the only one who knew she had fallen for a mortal. 12 heavenly soldiers surrounded her, shackles binding her and forcing her to her knees. Fairy Lily, you have broken heavenly law, enamored yourself with the mortal world. Do you admit your guilt? At his words, Lily didn't repent at all. Instead, she struggled even more fiercely. Why can the 7th fairy princess love a mortal while I cannot? Is it just because she is the heavenly empress's daughter, a princess? Heaven is unjust. I refuse to accept this. Rage twisted her features as she writhed against her bonds. The 7th fairy princess had neglected her dignity and secretly wed a mortal, stirring an uproar throughout the 3 realms. Even in the human world, people sang of the marriage between a heavenly maiden and a man. The heavenly emperor was furious, personally erasing the 7th fairy princess's immortal name and striking her down to the mortal world, never to meet again. After that, immortal-mortal romances became even more forbidden. The 7th fairy princess's name could not even be mentioned. Judgment Lord had planned to speak gently to Lily, but now he was seething. Fairy Lily, you secretly descended to the mortal world, violating heavenly law, and even now you show no remorse and dare to slander the heavenly empress. Your crime is beyond forgiveness. Since you wish to fall from immortality, we'll grant your wish. Guards, draw out her immortal bones, erase her immortal name, and announce this to the 3 realms as a warning. The moment her immortal bones were removed, Lily's appearance began to change. Once, nourished by spiritual energy, her face had never aged. Now, though her features were much the same, the loss of her immortal aura left her haggard. She no longer had that unstained, lotus-out-of-mud grace. She was merely a passably pretty woman. Lily collapsed on the ground, feeling the changes in her own body. I casually took her immortal bones, then dropped them to the floor and ground them under my shoe. As my spiritual energy leaked out, the bones shattered into dust. She no longer had any chance to turn back. However, unwilling she might be, her powers were gone. She couldn't harm me in the slightest. All she could do was lie there, staring at me with venom in her eyes. I said, "Lily, you have broken heavenly law and willingly fallen from immortality. From now on, don't call yourself Fairy Lily. There will be no more sisterhood between us. Take care of yourself." After this, There would be no more ties between us. Whatever sensational acts she committed in the future would have nothing to do with me. Lily left decisively without looking back, running straight toward the Execution Terrace and jumping, as if she held no lingering attachment to the heavenly realm. As soon as she was gone, I quickly reclaimed all the magical artifacts and pills I had once given her. At the same time, I used the water moon mirror to watch her every move, lest she cause trouble again. I remembered that at this point, Thomas Shen had already fallen in love with that courtesan at home. I only hoped Lily wouldn't be too shocked when the time came. In her previous descent, she had 1,000 years of cultivation to rely on, and naturally feared no mortals. Now she had no powers at all. Her shoulders couldn't carry, and her hands couldn't lift. How would she face the faithless Thomas Shen? I found myself quite curious. After falling to the mortal world, Lily waited in Thomas Shen's house, ready to marry him as soon as he returned, so they could be husband and wife for life. But the person who pushed open the door was not the Thomas she pined for, but a strikingly beautiful woman. At the sight of her delicate face, I recognized her at once. The courtesan, Margaret. Thomas's family was poor. He had sold his land to scrape together enough silver, and Margaret had really followed him home. In the previous life, Margaret had only set her sights on Thomas's wealth. But this time, I frowned, then quickly understood. She was born in a brothel. The best she could hope for was to marry into a wealthy household as a concubine. Still the status of a courtesan. But if she followed Thomas, she could be his official wife, and her status would be that of a respectable woman. If she bet on the right man and Thomas passed the imperial exam with high honors, she would become the wife of an official, far better than selling smiles and her body. This world truly was unfair. Men had endless choices, while women had only a few paths they could take. Thinking of this, I felt a deep regret. For Margaret and for myself. Would I be able to control my own fate in this life? When Lily saw Margaret, her expression changed, her eyes reddening as she turned to Thomas. "Lily, what are you doing here?" Thomas clearly hadn't expected Lily to return for him. After all, what immortal maiden would willingly give up everything for a mortal? Margaret was used to seeing all sorts of scenes. One glance was enough for her to understand exactly what was going on. She stepped forward and took Lily's hand. "Sister, don't blame us. Thomas was simply too impatient to bring me home, so we slighted you. If you have feelings for Thomas, I'll gladly make room for you. In a few days, I'll have Thomas take you as his concubine. We can serve Thomas together from then on." Every word she spoke seemed considerate, thinking only of others, but each sentence stabbed straight into Lily's heart. Yet her words were flawlessly polite. No one could fault her. Since ancient times, those who were courted with a proper bride price became wives. Those who turned up of their own accord were taken as concubines. Lily had cast aside her pride and everything else to be with one man. Had she not come here on her own, like a concubine? Watching through the water moon mirror, I was curious. Deprived of all immortal powers, how would Lily cope? As expected, Lily's face grew darker with each word Margaret spoke. When she heard Thomas was planning to marry Margaret as his proper wife and make her a concubine, she instinctively tried to chant incantations and form hand seals. The corner of my lips curled. "My dear little sister, you're no immortal now. No matter how many spells you recite, they'll do you no good." Before, with 1,000 years of cultivation, Lily never had to scheme. Now that she was mortal and her beauty couldn't outshine Margaret's, how long could Thomas's love last? It really would be interesting to see. After a moment, Lily realized that her spells were having no effect. Only then did she remember her immortal bones had been ripped out and she could no longer use any magic. Her face turned ugly. She turned to Thomas with a look of despair. "Thomas, I fell from immortality for you, and you'd have me be a concubine?" Thomas looked embarrassed. He glanced at Lily without speaking, clearly hoping she would yield. Now that Lily had lost her powers, and her looks could no longer compare, she seemed coarse and unreasonable next to Margaret. Helpless, Thomas gritted his teeth and took Lily's hand. "Lily, I know this is unfair to you, but Margaret has shown me deep affection, and I have promised her the place of lawful wife. I cannot go back on my word. Be my concubine instead. I'll treat you and Margaret equally." At that, Lily burst into tears. Thomas, must you treat me this way? A weeping beauty was enough to give Thomas pause. He hastily pulled her into his arms and whispered consolation. Margaret watched them cling to each other but didn't grow angry. Her face calm, she said faintly, "Either you accept being a concubine, or I'll tell everyone the truth. Let's see which man within 10 miles around will take in such a shameless woman. Then you can forget about ever stepping foot in the Shen household again." With a single sentence, she assumed all the airs of the lawful wife. Lily's face turned ashen. She had no other choice and could only grit her teeth and yield. "I'm willing to be a concubine. So long as I can marry Thomas, I'll accept even that." Margaret remained composed, as if she had expected this outcome all along. I felt a savage satisfaction and a growing fondness for Margaret. It was a pity such a woman was wasted on a man like Thomas. Without any spiritual power, Lily began living like a beast of burden in the Shen household. Before dawn each day, she had to start the fire and cook, serving the entire family. For the first few days, Thomas would help her a little. After a while, he stopped pretending. All the chores were dumped on Lily alone. Hard labor gradually built her strength. Her once slender waist thickened, her arms began to look almost muscular. She could now carry water and chop wood with ease. Each morning she had to cook for everyone. Only after they finished eating, after she had stood respectfully beside Margaret and served, could she pick at the leftovers. There was barely any oil or meat left, just enough to keep her from starving. Of course she resented this. Once, she had been a lofty fairy, able to solve all problems with a flick of her sleeve. Thomas had once cherished and revered her. Now she was nothing more than an ordinary mortal. Even the beauty she had always prided herself on was overshadowed by Margaret. Naturally, she could not expect to be treated as before. Today was worse than usual. All that was left for her was a bowl of wild vegetable porridge. Thomas had carefully scooped out the few grains of rice in it and given them to Margaret. In Lily's bowl, only bitter greens remained. Lily took one sip, and her expression twisted. As a fairy, she had drunk celestial dew and flower nectar. When had she ever eaten such coarse food? The wild vegetables were so bitter and unpalatable that she finally exploded. "I picked these greens, I cooked this meal. Even the firewood came from the wood I chopped in the mountains. Why do I get nothing but this clear, watery soup of wild herbs?" Thomas had her completely under his thumb by now. He merely stood up and ladled her another bowl of porridge, still full of wild vegetables and almost no rice. He said blandly, "Margaret's health is poor. She can't do heavy work. I have to study, and a gentleman stays far from the kitchen. Once I earn my degree, you won't have to do any of this." After a moment's thought, he leaned close to Lily's ear and whispered, "You may only be my concubine, but I still call you wife. These chores are usually managed by the lawful wife. It's an honor that they're all entrusted to you. And these aren't just wild vegetables. They help with conception. Don't you want a child that bears both our blood? Then our family of 3 can live a happy life together. Won't that be wonderful?" Hope flared in Lily's eyes. "When will you pass the examination, Thomas?" Full of confidence, he promised, "No need to worry, the autumn exam is near. I'll bring you glory then. A man's promise is like a fart. No wind is needed for it to dissipate." But that didn't stop Lily from being overjoyed. "Thomas, you're a dragon among men. I know you'll succeed." Such obvious empty words wouldn't fool even a naive village girl being lured away by human traffickers. Yet Lily, a goddess who had cultivated for 1,000 years, believed him. She had totally immersed herself in the dream Thomas spun. I wanted to ask Lily, since she'd come to his house, had she ever seen him study diligently or work hard? He did nothing but chase pleasure. How could a man like that ever be top scorer in the imperial exam? The longer I watched, the more something felt off. Their voices were not quiet. Margaret sat nearby, watching coldly, with not the slightest reaction. That in itself was suspicious. A faint suspicion arose in my heart. I needed proof. In the Hall of Fate, I traded one of my own life petals for Margaret's life record. Reading it carefully, I became even more certain. Margaret, too, had been reborn. In the last life, Thomas had never had enough money to redeem her from the brothel. Margaret had used most of her own jewelry and valuables to make up the difference before she could leave. This time was different. She had forced Thomas to sell off the last few mu of good farmland just to raise enough for her redemption. As I had suspected, heaven had pitied her as it had pitied me, granting her a second chance. One day in heaven is a year in the mortal world. While I was in the Hall of Fate for only a short while, more than 3 months passed below. Margaret was already pregnant, her belly beginning to swell. And Lily had stirred up trouble again. In those 3 months, under Lily's tireless service, Margaret had conceived a child, but life grew even harsher. Lily had already dug up all the wild vegetables nearby. Now she had to go more than 10 miles away to find any. I would never have guessed that my dear sister would turn out to be such an expert at digging wild greens. Margaret sold some of her remaining jewelry to support the family. Meanwhile, Thomas persuaded Lily to go reclaim wasteland at the east end of the village. That land was choked with weeds, hard as stone. Even one stroke of the hoe barely bit into it. Lily had never done such rough labor before. After 2 days, her hands and feet were covered in blisters. When she staggered home in the evening and saw Thomas, she flung herself into his arms, sobbing bitterly. "Thomas, that field at the east end is nothing but wasteland. I worked for days and cleared barely 1 mu. My hands and feet are all torn. I did it all for you." Thomas wrinkled his nose in disgust and pushed her away, forcing back a gag. "After all that time, you've managed only 1 mu? Useless. You're not eating tonight. Get to the field early tomorrow and sow the seeds. Don't delay Margaret's vegetables." Lily had never seen him like this. Eyes wide, she stared at him. "Thomas, you despise me now? You don't love me anymore?" He ignored her and turned toward the house. The pregnant Margaret was now his treasure. To him, Lily was just a servant he didn't have to pay. When Thomas tried to walk away, Lily clutched his sleeve, eyes red. "Thomas, have you fallen for that little fox spirit? Were all those vows you made to me lies? If you've lied to me, I'll make sure you and that slut Margaret die wretched deaths. I won't let her bear that bastard child either." That one word, bastard, completely enraged Thomas. "If he's a bastard, then what am I? You're just a shameless concubine. What right do you have to act high and mighty?" He slapped her hard across the face. Lily clutched her cheek, tears in her eyes. "You hit me. For that woman? Have you forgotten everything I did for you?" Thomas spat at her feet. "Fa, you're just an old hen that doesn't lay eggs. Still think you're some kind of fairy?" Lily would never have imagined that the gentle, refined gentleman of her dreams would one day curse her as an old hen. But it was too late for regrets. And now, once again, she thought of me. By a twist of fate, this time, she actually caused a death. For no reason, my chest suddenly tightened and pain lanced through me, reminding me of the agony of having my immortal bones ripped out and falling into the Nine Netherworlds. My instincts told me Lily was up to something again. I hurriedly summoned the water moon mirror. As expected, she was thrusting a dagger toward her own heart. "Sister, save me. Sister, you promised to take care of me. You can't abandon me, sister." She knew she could no longer use immortal magic. Only a faint trace of spiritual power remained near her heart. That was the last link between her body and me. I cast a spell and descended to the mortal world. The moment Lily saw me, she flung herself into my arms, sobbing. Then she grabbed my hand. "Sister, save me. Thomas actually hit me." My gaze swept over her, cold and distant. Lily was no longer who she had been. Her hands were calloused, her skin several shades darker, fine lines creasing the corners of her eyes. She looked as if she had aged more than 10 years. "If he beats you, you can divorce him. Why come to me?" Lily shook her head wildly. "Divorce? I can't. Thomas promised me that once he becomes top scholar, he'll send that fox spirit away. Then we can grow old together." "Sister, you're always like this, doing everything you can to ruin my happiness. I will be happy with Thomas. I'll prove it to you." This time, I didn't stop her as I had in the last life. Instead, I smiled sweetly. "You misunderstand. Why would I stand in your way? I know how much you love him. How could I bear to separate you? What did you want from me?" Joy lit Lily's face. "Sister, I'm human now. I have no way to make a living. Margaret controls all the money in the house. Thomas and I have to endure her every day. I haven't eaten a full meal in days. Sister, could you use a golden hairpin to turn stone to gold, make life a little better for us, and best of all, help Thomas pass the exam with top honors?" Then he'll dismiss that fox spirit. I almost laughed out loud. After everything Thomas had done, she still blamed Margaret. Her plea was heartfelt, every word sincere. I truly could not fathom her thinking. He beats you, and you still want me to get him money and a career? Lily answered with pride. You don't understand love, sister. Thomas only vents his anger on me because he's trapped and frustrated. Thomas said, a beating shows intimacy, scolding shows love. If he didn't care about me, why would he only beat me and no one else? That proves how much he loves me. I shook my head. A heart blinded by love was a terrible thing. My eyes grew colder. My patience was spent. Changing a mortal's fate for personal reasons violates heavenly law. The lightest punishment is 12 strikes of heavenly thunder. A heavier one would send me down to the mortal world for 10 lifetimes of reincarnation. Are you trying to get me killed? Something flickered in Lily's eyes, but she quickly answered, righteously, what's wrong with helping me once? Thomas is destined to succeed anyway. You'd only be bringing that success a little earlier. There are countless mortals. Even if you change Thomas's fate, there's no guarantee anyone will notice. Why are you so timid? Do you really have the heart to abandon me? Listening to her selfish words, I lost all remaining patience, but my voice grew soft and gentle. After you fell from immortality, there were countless heavenly eyes fixed on you too. Changing a mortal's fate would be far too easy to catch. But if you become pregnant, Thomas will naturally change his attitude. If you bear him a child, I can go to the god of wealth and ask for some luck to be given to the child. Then, when you become important through your son, Margaret will no longer be able to compare with you. I took her hand, speaking like a loving elder sister, helping her plan her future. Then I produced a packet of powder I had prepared and placed it in her hand. This is Spring Breeze Once, a tonic for passion and for conception. You know how strong heavenly medicines are. Once you're pregnant, everything will change. Leaving behind a single petal so she could contact me, I said nothing more and flew back to the heavenly realm. Her good days were still ahead. Before leaving, I secretly met with someone. Only with her cooperation could my plan succeed. Following my instructions, Lily mixed Spring Breeze Once into the wine. Its effects were swift but lasted only an hour. Within that hour, she had to make Thomas drink it. But heaven did not favor her. That night, Thomas went to drink with his classmates at the academy and didn't come home. Lily rushed straight to the academy, pushing past everyone in her way, shouting and screaming inside. Thomas craved money and beauty. His friends were much the same. Didn't know the famous Thomas Shen couldn't control his little concubine. What a spectacle. A lowly concubine dares show her face in a place of learning. Aren't you afraid she'll tarnish your name, Brother Shen? Their jeers stung Thomas's pride. He shoved Lily away. Have you made enough of a scene? I study hard for your sake, so you can live well, and you come here and shame me like this? We're done. When we get home, I'll divorce you. Lily panicked. In desperation, she dropped to her knees before everyone and begged for forgiveness, groveling. Seeing this, the other men praised Thomas for keeping his women in line and mocked Lily openly. She didn't even sense their contempt, only looked at Thomas with tear-filled eyes, clinging to him desperately. That made Thomas feel all the more superior. To regain face, he struck her across the face without hesitation. You eat my food and wear my clothes. What right do you have to question me? You're just an old hen that doesn't lay eggs. You still claim you're a fairy? Then go ask your fellow immortals for money. It'd be easy for them. Once you have money, I'll forgive you. His ugliness made me sick. He had finally stripped off his mask and laid his darkest desires bare. Blinded by love, Lily still didn't wake up from that slap. She was only terrified that Thomas would truly cast her aside. More than the pain, it was his impatience that terrified her. On her knees, she clutched his hand as if he were her only salvation. Thomas, if I get money, you'll forgive me? You'll never leave me? Thomas didn't reply. He still cared about his reputation in the academy. But Lily understood his meaning. She stood, touching her swollen cheek, and said, I'll get the money. Wait for me. Once I have money, you'll treat me well again. I didn't know whether she truly believed that, or whether she was simply lying to herself so she wouldn't regret her choices. Watching her degrade herself, letting others trample her pride, that was the love she yearned for. Love without dignity. She had no skills, so naturally she turned to me for money, as Thomas had hinted. Sure enough, once she returned home, she used the petal I had left to reach me. She complained at length about her misfortunes, about Thomas beating her again. When I didn't react, she timidly revealed her true purpose. "Sister, I can't get pregnant right away. Could you give me some money first? Just a little gold would do." I kept my tone calm. "Have you forgotten? Only mortals need gold and silver. Why would I have any?" Of course she knew this, but still said as if it were only natural, "You can turn stone to gold. It's just a small spell. Is heavenly law more important than your sister's happiness? Have you forgotten how we depended on each other in the past?" Hearing her speak of our shared past so lightly, I knew it was time to push her away. I answered her bluntly, "If you need money, borrow it. You're immortal and I'm a fairy. Why should I help you because you're shameless? You've injured your heart meridian. Your true body has withered. The last trace of your immortal power is gone. You only have 10 years left to live. Use them to enjoy life with your Thomas, and don't contact me again." Lily glared at me, shrieking like a madwoman. "Peony, what do you mean? I've already lowered myself to beg you, and you still insult me? If you don't give me money today, don't ever call me your sister again," I laughed. "I'm a fairy. What would I want with a mortal sister? Did you think everyone was as stupid as I used to be? From this day on, I won't meddle in your affairs ever again." I withdrew my life petal. Lily watched it fade and went rigid. She had never thought that one day, I, the foolish, doting sister, would truly abandon her. If Thomas learned she had completely offended me, that he could never again get help through me, he would certainly cast her aside. The very thought made Lily shiver with dread. No, she couldn't lose Thomas. With money, everything could be fixed. Borrowing money, yes, she could borrow money. She would pay it back later. Grasping at this hope, she convinced herself. Lily went to the underworld bank to borrow silver, just as I had expected. She had money for now, but would owe several times that amount later. Only someone as foolish as Lily would accept such a deal. Even the underworld bank required collateral. Lily owned nothing and could only steal the land deed to use as security. Margaret watched it all with one eye open and the other closed. The money arrived quickly. Thomas believed she had found some endless source of wealth. Resuming his guise as the elegant gentleman, he apologized profusely. The two of them passed several sweet days together. Even pregnant Margaret was ignored. For a moment, it looked like the peaceful happiness Lily had always dreamed of. But what is love without trial and hardship? In no time, hardship arrived. Debt collectors came knocking. They splashed chicken blood and smeared filth on the door. Only then did Thomas learn that Lily's silver came from the underworld bank, and that she had used the house and land as collateral. They were about to be thrown out. The thugs beat and kicked them ruthlessly. Debt collectors always knew how hard to strike. Enough to leave their victims writhing on the ground, unable to stand, but not enough to kill them. Dead debtors never pay. Margaret alone escaped a beating because she had gone out to buy food. When Lily finally managed to crawl over to Thomas and tried to help him stand, he slapped her straight to the ground and began pummeling her. "Slut! You slut! You borrowed so much money! How am I supposed to repay it? I've lost everything. It's all your fault." At first, Lily tried to resist, arguing between blows. "I only borrowed money for you. This is all your fault." His fragile pride shattered, Thomas struck even harder, fists flying until he had no strength left and collapsed on the floor. Only then did Margaret approach to help Thomas up. Everything of value in the house had been taken by the debt collectors. Only the pendant Margaret wore close to her skin remained. She sold it for a little silver and used it to rent a tiny house. Thomas, thinking Margaret truly loved him, was touched that she stayed by his side even now, feeding him soup with her own hands. He didn't know there was a slow-acting poison in that soup, one that had to be taken for a month. That was Margaret's reason for staying. Things seemed peaceful in the Shen household lately, but it was only an illusion. By day, Lily had to till the fields and work. At night, she still had to attend to Thomas and Margaret. Thomas, wanting to crush her spirit, devised a cruel punishment. They couldn't afford candle stands anymore, so Lily had to hold the candles herself. The hot wax often burned her hands raw. If she slumped, Thomas had Margaret jab her with needles. Thus he didn't have to hinder her by day and could still torment her by night. After my rebirth, I had considered killing Lily outright, but that would have been too easy. Only by having the man she loved most torment her, trapping her in the mire of her own making, could I balance the suffering of my endless fall into the Nine Netherworlds. Under cover of night, I entered Thomas's dreams. There, I guided him, step by step, to see a future in which, with Margaret's help, he became a wealthy man and passed the imperial exam with high honors. At first, he didn't quite believe it, but when he dreamed the same dream night after night, and the small details he saw in the dream kept matching reality. When I even let him dream of hidden gold and see those dreams come true the next day, Thomas was overjoyed, convinced he had gained the power of prophetic dreams. He grew even more devoted to Margaret and all the more violent toward Lily. "Faugh, what bad luck. It's all your fault I've fallen so low. Get to work, you little wretch, or I'll beat you to death when I get back." As if still not satisfied, he gave Lily a brutal kick. She curled around herself on the floor. Turning, Thomas's expression softened as he addressed Margaret. "Margaret, I'm going out on business. Rest at home. I'll bring you your favorite peach blossom cakes when I return." Then he left. The contrast was so stark that even Lily could no longer endure it. "You fox spirit. It isn't enough to seduce Thomas. You've turned him against me too. I won't let you get away with this." She screamed and raged as if all her suffering came from the woman before her, conveniently forgetting the man who had betrayed her. Margaret wasn't angered. She only smiled. "And what will you do to me? I'm the wife and you're the concubine. Thomas says that when I give birth, he'll take me to the capital for the exam. When he becomes top scholar, I'll be the wife of an important official. As for you, Thomas has already found a broker. He's going to sell you." Lily snapped. Before Margaret could finish, Lily snatched up a nearby kitchen knife and swung it at her. "You seduced Thomas and destroyed my love. This is all your fault. You deserve to die." It wouldn't have been hard for Margaret to dodge, but she didn't even try. She stood still and let Lily drive the knife into her belly. Blood spurted forth, soaking Margaret's clothes. Seeing Margaret collapse in a pool of blood, Lily finally realized what she had done. Terrified, she bolted for the door without thinking. By the time Thomas arrived with others, Margaret seemed to be drowning in her own blood. It kept flowing, carrying away her life. As her life hung by a thread, I appeared by Thomas's side and whispered, "She's bleeding too heavily. It may cost 2 lives. Only the heart of an immortal can bring her back." After so many prophetic dreams, my voice was familiar to Thomas. He nodded on instinct. "An immortal's heart?" Thomas seemed entranced, muttering, "Margaret can't die. She's the one who will help me make my fortune and pass the exam. Our child will marry a princess. She can't die, can't die." Then he grabbed Lily's wrist. "You were once a fairy. Give me your heart. Save her with your heart." Lily stared at him in disbelief, her voice shaking. "Thomas, look at me. It's me, Lily. Didn't you say you loved me most?" Thomas's gentleness vanished, replaced by cold cruelty. "You slut. You hurt Margaret and my child. Dying for her is an honor. I'll burn plenty of paper money for you in the underworld." He picked up a sharp knife and plunged it into her chest. Lily panicked at last. But she had no strength left to resist. Her eyes turned toward me, full of unwillingness and mute pleading. The blade twisted. With a single savage motion, Thomas dug her heart out. His movements were so practiced one might think he had been a butcher. Lily's eyes bulged. A bloody hole gaped in her chest. It was a grisly sight, but to me it was deeply satisfying. As her consciousness faded, I leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Do you know why you could never conceive Thomas's child? Because I had Margaret put medicine in your food. A selfish, base soul like yours doesn't deserve to bear life." I could feel the hatred burning in her. But there was nothing she could do. She could only wait for the black and white spirits of the underworld to drag her away. I had once asked King of the Underworld about Lily's next reincarnation. In this age, few want to bear children. A fallen immortal is despised. Added to that, Lily had injured Margaret and killed her unborn child. In the end, she was destined to spend 10,000 lives in the beast realm. I was satisfied. I gathered a thread of my remaining spiritual power and sent it into Margaret's body, shielding her heart at the crucial moment and saving her life. The child in her belly, however, could not be saved. Thomas, hands dripping with blood, held the still beating heart and stared at Margaret. "Margaret, eat. Once you eat it, you'll be fine. Our child will marry a princess. I'll be the emperor's father-in-law. Eat. Eat it. Eat." I knew then that the slow-acting poison I had given Margaret was taking effect. When I learned Margaret was also reborn, I had met with her in secret. From her account, I learned what had happened to her in the previous life. Lily had only pretended to eat, forget worry grass, and forget the past. In secret, she descended to the mortal world to see Thomas. By then, he had already married Margaret and, using the golden hairpin Lily had left behind, turned stone to gold and gained a vast fortune. Unable to bear his marriage to another, Lily had coaxed Thomas into cutting out Margaret's heart, threatening to reclaim the hairpin otherwise. Naturally, Thomas refused to give up his riches and killed Margaret instead. He had then proudly presented Margaret's heart to Lily as if offering treasure. At the time, I had kept Lily under close watch. She had only been able to see Thomas briefly. She could not stay with him. That made her hate me even more, which led to everything that followed. In the end, by a twist of fate, I still managed to reclaim the hairpin, and all Thomas's wealth scattered. Reborn or not, Thomas always loved himself most. If there was profit in it, he would kill anyone. Working together with Margaret, I had her mix a contraceptive into Lily's daily vegetables, cutting off her hope of bearing a child. As for Thomas, his greatest loves were money and status. I fed him slow poison, day after day, until at last he became a simple-minded fool, forever parted from wealth and glory. Later, I gave Margaret some silver. She used it to open a women's academy, hiring teachers to educate girls so they could read and think for themselves and not be so easily deceived. Thomas, after a thorough beating from Margaret, was thrown out. Through the water-moon mirror, I once watched Thomas, now a half-wit, scramble with a stray dog for scraps of food. That dog was Lily's new life in the beast realm. Over time, Thomas even came to believe he himself was a dog, crawling by the roadside and barking at passers-by. He was often mocked and bullied. In her spare time, Margaret would hire ruffians to harass him. His days were bitter beyond words. At last, I could return to the heavenly realm, make my report, and devote myself to cultivation once more, as Peony the flower fairy, hoping one day to ascend to true godhood and protect the people under my care.